Damn it, Disney! You were so close! You were so close! You almost had, like, a really good, solid, funny, stylized, dark, entertaining Disney reboot remake from beginning to end! And they screwed it up, goddammit! Okay, as you can tell, this is gonna be kind of a complicated review. I obviously just saw Cruella, and this is one of those movies where I'm not gonna lie, I probably recommend it. There's 2/3 of this movie that I think are hugely entertaining, wonderfully mean-spirited and dark. It has charming characters. The acting is a lot of fun. It looks great. Has a kickin' soundtrack. This is actually like one of the best Disney soundtracks, just made of songs that are not, like written for the film. I mean, there's songs from 60s and 70s, I believe. I think it takes place in the 70s, but I think it starts off in the 60s, goes into 70s, I think. But just filled with like just classic great songs, and it keeps the energy high and the momentum high. It really looks like it's gonna have this delightfully dark, mean-spirited edge, and for a good chunk of the film, it does. And it's really refreshing. It's really imaginative. It's one of those things where you're almost forgetting it's a Disney remake. It starts off very much in the same vein that you've seen a lot of these Disney remakes, where there's a lot of winks to the audience. She's born with the black and white hair, like dumb shit like that. But it quickly becomes pretty interesting and pretty over-the-top dark in the best way. The best comparison I can make to this is it's like the film A Series of Unfortunate Events. If you were, instead of watching those kids, you were watching Count Olaf grow up. But the same bad stuff happens to him, that happens to those kids. And you know me, I'm down for that kind of stuff. I think a lot of people who want to see a backstory on Cruella de Vil, granted I don't know many that did, but since it exists, this is the right way to go about it. And it is massively entertaining. And if you look at the run length of this movie, it's about 2 hours and 15 minutes long, and I'll be honest, I was not looking forward to seeing this, especially for 2 hours and 15 minutes. I was like, oh my god, A Quiet Place 2 just came out. That was done in like 90 minutes. What is in this that demands more attention than like a horror film, about people trying to survive and stuff? And a lot of it checks out and works really well and is paced well. And as I said before, all the characters are likable, and even lines that aren't really the best lines sometimes are still done with a lot of charm. And actually, even the writing is not that bad, and it jumps around sort of, you're still following, Cruella kind of go through, growing up and discovering, sort of playing to her more polite side and kind side and more, devilish side, and flip-flopping back and forth. And even though it can be over the top and silly, it's still interesting. It still changes up what she's gonna do. At one point she's a fashion designer, the next she's kind of doing a heist film, and then it's like a revenge movie, and it juggles all of that, and it for the most part does it very well. Where it all goes to shit, without going into spoilers, is that all the Disney cliches, all the, bullet points that they always have to work in, they are through the film, but they don't get in the way until the last third. It looks like the film is reaching its climax at one point. And you're thinking, okay, well, time to get my coat on, time to get ready to go. They're just going to have a little fight here or whatever, and then, whatever's going to happen happens, and they're going to roll the credits. But no, there's at least a half hour left, and there's another twist, because there are some twists in this, and you think they have one in there that you can figure out pretty easy, but they have this other one. And it isn't just revealing the twist, it's seeing how the character comes to grips with the twist, and then how other characters come to grips with the twist, and then what they're gonna do about the twist, and then planning the plan around what they're gonna do about the twist, and then making sure everyone's in on the twist, and then actually going ahead with the plan for the twist, and it just keeps going, and it works its way back into pretty much what Maleficent did, where, yes, it's technically the story, the origin story of this villain, but is she really a villain? And they change it up. Well, let me give you a big hint here. You remember in the trailers where they say you want to make coats out of dogs, and she's like, oh, well, they need a story, don't they? Indicating she doesn't really do that. Well, they lean pretty heavy into that to a point where at the end, there's again, without giving away, there's a mid-credit sequence that if they're indicating she does, like, make coats out of dogs, this mid-credit sequence makes no sense at all. There is so much you can just, like, pick apart, like, wait a minute, how does that add up in the slightest? So that's really unfortunate, because we really have this movie that's refreshingly dark and twisted, granted not as dark and twisted as I would like to see, and I'm sure, you know, people who know the Cruella character and know the mean things she does and terrible things she does in the movies and stuff like that would like to see out of this, but it is refreshingly dark compared to the other Disney remakes, and refreshingly likable and energetic and interesting. And even though sort of the main bullet points you can figure out, you didn't exactly know what direction it was always gonna go, kind of what was behind every corner. So I guess I am recommending this with the knowledge that things are probably gonna go south in the end, and depending on your tolerance, that might ruin the film for you. There's been plenty of movies where the ending has just completely ruined it for me, and it almost does for me, because it is just the typical Disney mistakes, but it works so well with the Disney remake mistakes in so many other ways. This really does not feel like, at least for 2/3 of it, it does not feel like someone that was given this assignment, make this Cruella movie, make sure it has these things in it, and just turn it in, do not go against our rules, you know, like that kind of thing, and this is just the best they can do. No, it feels like there is passion behind this movie. There is a real want, need, love, and joy to tell this story, and that is super, super refreshing with these Disney remakes. It does not feel like they're just going through the numbers, oh, let's just do exactly what we do with all of these. Even when they do that, they do it in an interesting and new, fresh, fun way. So I am still recommending this movie, but again, there has to be this awareness that if you're not someone who, you know, mathematically I have to recommend it because it's 2/3 good, but if you are someone that'll be thrown off by that last third and you feel like that'll cancel out the 2/3 that came before it, this might not be the film for you. For me, I'm really glad I saw it. This is actually a Disney remake I wouldn't mind seeing again. I would just stop it, you know, a half hour before it ends. But yeah, I'd say that the look is great, the acting's a lot of fun, and I think the tragedy too about the last third just kind of really going back to the traditional Disney remake formula is the acting is still good, it still looks really nice, and there's even one or two nice moments, but by the time you get there, you're just checked out. They're still throwing in, like I said, these big surprises and what does it mean to the characters, but you're done. There's a really nice monologue Emma Stone has where she goes to this fountain and she does this, you know, big dramatic take all in one shot. And it's really well acted, but I was just so done with everything they were throwing at me, and I just couldn't believe they were throwing more after everything that's happened. They had such a perfect spot to stop that I just could not get into it. Even though I could appreciate that she was doing a good job acting, I just could not get into it, and I couldn't get into the plan, and I couldn't get into the little twist that how they were going to try and get the villain back and everything. And it's a shame. It is a shame. But for me, I really, really had a good time with the rest of this. This isn't usually something I talk about, but the fashion in this movie is really, really cool. In terms of where I come from with that, I think for me it's kind of like Cars. I'm not a car expert, but if there's like a car show, like on the street where they line up the cars and such, if it looks really nice or like really crazy, like I've never seen something like that before, I'll give a look. I'll sort of be like, oh, that's neat. Oh, that's cool what they're doing with that. And it's kind of the same thing with fashion. Like, oh, if something looks nice, I'll say that looks nice. But if something is like really weird and crazy, I love that shit. And there's a lot of weird and crazy stuff in this. And especially there's parts where Cruella is trying to show up the big boss in this, and she's trying to get revenge, and the ways she does it are so entertaining and so wonderfully over the top. And it reminds me a lot of Han Solo and the movie Solo. You remember how he was always described as a smuggler, and it's like, cool, yeah, that makes sense. And then he finds, Luke Skywalker and Leia and stuff, and he sort of changes his ways, and it's like, yeah, all right, maybe I'll fight for something, maybe I'll be about something. And then Solo came along and said, well, he's not really a smuggler because it was against the Empire, or he's not really a bad guy. They did the same thing. And for 2/3 of this movie, they are not doing that. She is doing stuff for mean, vengeful reasons, and she's committing crimes, and there's stuff you wouldn't usually see in a Disney she gets drunk. There's a death very early on in this movie that legit surprised me. It's kind of funny, too. But because it was just so out of nowhere, and what's done with that death throughout the majority of the film is really pretty twisted and dark, and it's something where I'm looking at this like, all right, and even though there's a part of my brain saying, I'm sure they're gonna retcon that death somehow, or not like the person isn't dead, but they're gonna find some way to work in what Disney usually does and not make it that bad. There's sort of like another way of looking at it, and they do, and again, you can figure that out pretty quickly. It still wasn't ruining anything for me, because there was still a good tone throughout this whole thing that was not feeling like traditional Disney, or maybe 40s Disney, they would really do dark, creepy stuff, and they didn't give a shit, as long as they had a happy ending, So I am recommending this. This is a Disney remake I did technically enjoy. I like 2/3 of this film. Mathematically, I enjoyed it. But it is a shame it wasn't great all the way through, because this could have been like a really great film, and I guess I'd much rather have something like this come close to being great than something like Mulan, where all the pieces were there to be great and they didn't even attempt half of them. This one really has a passion, really has a unique vision of what they wanted to do with this character, and it was very entertaining most of the time. So it's up to you, man. I think if you're one of those people where the ending can ruin a film for you, this probably isn't for you. But if you're one of those people where you say, I want to see a film that's entertaining and fun and kind of twisted and has kind of not even that much of a Disney vibe, it really doesn't have it until the end, and then a little bit in the beginning. And it's kind of, there's drops of it every once in a while, but they really do a good job sort of making it feel like something else. The same way I was saying Raya is a good step to maybe some newer territory for Disney that I like to see. It's kind of the same thing here. Even though the last third really just goes back to the typical formula, I'd really like to see them explore stuff like what they did in the first 2/3 of this, because I really think there's something there. In many respects, there are more risks being taken for Disney, in this style. Again, a lot of it's retconned in the last third, but in my mind, I just wrote a different ending. And I'm just satisfied with that. I said that I did a review with Brad Jones with this too, and I bring this up there too. So this isn't technically a spoiler, because again, I think you see this in the trailer. But in my mind, where the film should stop, or should start really, really wrapping up, is there's a scene where she has the Dalmatians of the villain in this, and one of them ate this locket that she's trying to get back, so they're waiting for it to pretty much poop it out. It's kind of like this side story, and at the end she has this big, okay, not the end, but what should be the end, she has this fashion show, and she comes out in this Dalmatian coat, what looks like a Dalmatian coat, and the villain looks at it and says, she took my dogs, and she killed my dogs, and she made coats out of them. And I think right after that, I think Cruella should look while wearing the Dalmatian coat and hold up the locket. And just be like, roll the credits! Just end there, that'd be it! But even then watching, I'm like, I know they're not gonna do that. But this can still end well, let me see. And again, it looks like it's leading towards a point where there's going to be a climax, or it's gonna wrap up, soonish, and it's not, man. There's like another 30 minutes. It's really, really a shame, but I cannot discredit the first 2/3 of this film. That was really, really fun. And again, if you watch the beginning and you're like, oh, they're kind of doing the typical Disney remake stuff, give it a minute, and you'll know the point where you'll be like, whoa, this got interesting all of a sudden. It turns on pretty fast, and it stays there for a really, really long time. So, yes, I am recommending it. I think you should go see it. Just keep in mind, when you get to the last third, either just brace yourself, it's not going to be as dark and twisted as the first 2/3, and it's going to retcon a lot of stuff, or just leave and look up what happens if you're really interested. But I still think the first 2/3 of this is mad fun. I'd watch it again. I probably will watch it again. I really, really had a good time through the majority of this film. So I have to recommend it. I just can't help it. Okay, I can, but I feel like I wouldn't be doing my job if I said, I really enjoyed a lot of this film, don't go see it. So, yes, this is one of the better Disney remakes. I think Pete's Dragon is still technically a better put-together film, but there's a lot more in this I would want to see again over Pete's Dragon. But Pete's Dragon, like I said, works better. It's more competently put together from beginning to end, but there's problems with that too. This one is just, it took more chances, it took more risks, and it has just a cool style. How often do you get to say that about Disney remake? It's cool. Like, it's a legit cool movie throughout the majority of it. So, yeah, those are my thoughts, man. What did you think? Did you think it worked all the way through? Did you see it and be like, yeah, what's he talking about? This was really great. Did you have the same issue where you were liking it until it got to the end and then it kind of fell apart? But you didn't mind, you still enjoyed it? Or did the ending just totally destroy it for you? Were you just like, no, that went against everything, god damn it, Disney? Or did you hate the whole thing? Maybe you hate the whole thing. I'd be fascinated by that, because I think there's some really cool stuff in here, but I can see that too, like I said, especially when you get to the end. So let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you've seen it, what you think of it. I know, again, kind of all over the map, but I am recommending it. This is, God, Pete's Dragon and probably this for these recent live-action remakes, Disney live-action remakes, are probably the best ones. So take that for what it's worth, and I will see you next time. Take care.